to the cloud. Okay. Good morning, everybody. I'm not going to talk that much because I don't know as much as everybody else who's on this call from the school with you guys. We have a great group of our leaders here today. I'm Chuck Jackson. I'm the executive director here at Creative Minds International Public Charter School. And my job here is just to sort of kick us off and to let you know what to expect. So we're going to run through a deck to talk about the school, both the lower school and the middle school. We are here to answer your questions. We are really lucky to have a parent with us who can share some of their experiences too. We also want to answer your questions, but the best way for us to do that is to share the information first because it might answer some of your questions. But if you have questions while we're talking, drop them in the chat. The other great thing about dropping them in the chat is at the end, not only can we answer them, but then we'll have a printout of them. And so we can type up answers and do an FAQ or something like that if we didn't get a chance to answer your questions live. All right, so again, questions in the chat. I'm Chuck Jackson, and I'm about to introduce our presenters. Actually, I'm just going to tell you who they are and let them introduce themselves, and then they can pick the next person to introduce themselves. So given that Nyamka Long, our Chief Academic Officer, is in the dead center of my screen, Nyamka, you go first.
All right, good morning and welcome to our open house. We're excited to share with you a little bit about our program and look forward to hearing your questions. I am the Chief Academic Officer here and I kind of oversee the academic program, but excited to introduce other members of our team who also really work hard to make sure all of our mission and vision really come to life. So I'm going to turn it over to Abby Sheffer, who's our lower school director.
Good morning, everyone. Abby Sheffer. I work with preschool through 4th grade. So I will get to know you very quickly if you decide to come here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lorna Dill, and I'm the middle school director. And I am in charge with making sure that the middle school runs smoothly and that your children who potentially come to CMI will transition into high school prepared and ready for the world ahead.
We also
Awesome. Oh, and we got a couple other people in the background, just so you know, some folks supporting this production. We've got Margaret Ward, who's our Director of Development and guru of all events. We've got Jen Andruzzi, who manages all of our communications, and Carlos, who is our tech guy. And there's our parent. Ty, do you mind introducing yourself real quick? I know you'll be speaking later in the presentation.
Sure. My name is Ty Olvera. I'm a parent of a pre-K3 student currently, as well as a 3rd grader. So I kind of span the lower school spectrum. Right now at CMI, I'm also the treasurer of our parent organization called the Creative Families Association. Happy to meet you all.
All right, Nyamka, it's all yours.
All right. So one of the things that we typically really enjoy about the open house is giving you an opportunity to see this space. However, in this virtual platform that we are right now, we have a little video that I'd like to share with you that hopefully will be able to provide a glimpse of what our campus looks like until we're able to come together in person. So I'm going to share that with you right now. All right, I hope that gave you a glimpse into our school. Um, there we go. Great. Next up, we are going to share some slides with you. Um, Hopefully that gave you some insight into what our school grounds look like. We have a beautiful campus, lots of green space, and so we're very eager to get back there on that space. Margaret, will you go ahead and share the slides, please? Thank you. So there is our castle there in the background, as you can see. That's one thing that we often, lots of the children like to say, I'm headed to my school, the castle. And it's really a beautiful space, and we're so fortunate to be able to have that location. We have our, there we go. We always like to lead with our mission because I think this sets the stage for all that we do when we think about our programming, how we interact with students, how we think about recruiting teachers and our staff. We really want to think about this as we kind of design our program. We want to cultivate within all of our students the mindset, skills, creativity, and commitment to equity, essential in becoming globally aware and independent minded citizens. So those words that kind of are highlighted there, like we're thinking about the mindset, skills, creativity, and commitment to equity. Like I said, those are the foundation and kind of frame all that we do here at Creative Minds. Next slide, please. There we go. Although we are one school, we kind of have these, we're kind of broken down into these two kind of subsets. We have our lower school, which is preschool through 4th grade, and then our middle school is 5th through 8th grade. And for this year, we currently have 540 students. And we are accepting students at all of those grade levels. As we think about how we interact with students, it's really a student-centered approach. We want to focus on the whole child. Not only, we realize that in order for students to be available for academic learning, their social emotional needs have to be met. And it's super important for us to consider all those aspects as we start to design and think about how we're going to meet the needs of all of our students, no matter where they are. Next slide. Our shared personal goals are really at that foundation of how we, envision our mission and help our mission come to pass. It's really cool to kind of have this shared language of how we interact with each other, how we move throughout our day, how we think about approaching various things. And the shared vocabulary, it's seen from our youngest learners all the way up through our middle school students. And it's really an opportunity for us to kind of ground ourselves in thinking about how we engage with each other. Are we being respectful of our environment? Are we being respectful of others' feelings? This year was a really great opportunity for us to practice resilience and also how to be adaptable as we've kind of navigated this pandemic this year. But you'll hear these words throughout lessons that our teachers are delivering. It's in our newsletter when we communicate with our families. It really helps us kind of think of how we have this shared personal goals and how we want to learn and work together as a community. Inclusion at Creative Minds. We want everyone to feel like they're a part of our community. And there's a lot that we do to work towards that for our community. We have ongoing meetings with families we have workshops that we're offering. There's parent-teacher conferences. At any time, families can reach out to teachers to kind of have a better understanding of where their children are, what supports are needed. Collaboration. What that looks like is that our teachers work together to plan meaningful learning opportunities for our students. They're working with their co-teacher, grade level teams. They're working with service providers, inclusion teachers. All of those team members come together so that we can really meet the needs and do some great programming for our students. When we think about the day in the life of students, we really want students to be able to participate in all of the learning opportunities that we have. And we want to ensure that students and teachers really understand all like student IEP goals and how to implement those in the classroom setting. We have related service providers who are part of our community, which is really nice because they are able to model for our other staff so that when they're not providing that support in the class, the teachers are able to utilize those strategies so that it's more than just this kind of pop in, kind of pop out approach to supporting students. But everyone who's working with a student really has a thorough understanding of how we can best support students. Next slide, please. We're excited about not only the activities that we have in the learning that happens during the day, we're also able to offer extracurricular activities. We offer a before school option for families. We understand that some families may need to get to work before our typical school day starts. So we offer a before school as well as an after school program that runs until 6 p.m. In our after school program, we kind of have two kind of levels of what that looks like. We have a creative clubs option, and then we also kind of just have a standard after school. The standard after school, if that's just you're looking for your child to just go out for recess or work on homework, that would be kind of the standard after school opportunity. We also have creative clubs, which those are kind of more geared towards like special interests. So there might be music lessons. There could be capoeira classes. There could be an art class, a cooking club. We also have, let's see what other, lots of different tippy toes, a ballet. So those are taught mostly by our teachers, their interests, and they do that after school. We have partnered with one or two other outside agencies who come and like offer a class, but it's solely run by our school, which is exciting too, because they're engulfed in our community and are, living and breathing our personal goals. So it's really nice to have that extended part where our students see our staff during the day, and then that's the same staff that they see after school. A couple of other options that we have are we have a robotics club, we have a debate team, and our middle school student council, which is just fabulous. They're really a great opportunity to kind of be that voice for our middle school community, and they just continue to thrive even in this virtual space. All right. And now I'd like to turn it over to Abby Sheffer, our lower school director, who's going to give you tons of details about our lower school.
Good morning. Next slide, please. So like Nyamka was saying a few minutes ago, our lower school is divided basically into two sections. We have the early childhood classes and then the elementary school classes, which go up through 4th grade. Pay attention to the pictures as we go through because they give a sense of what a typical school day looks like in terms of small groups and our approach to holistic learning throughout the day. Next slide, please. So in preschool and pre-K, we use the International Early Years curriculum, and then we follow that up in K through 4th with the International Primary curriculum. There are a few minor differences, but they flow really nicely together. They're very holistic in terms of how they approach learning and how they approach learning throughout the day in terms of integration of our e-classes, which are, actually, I'll get to that in a moment. That's a different slide. Next slide, please. So this is what a typical unit looks like with our international curriculum. There are some samples here from across the different grades. And they all start off with an entry point, which is just a chance to get the kids very excited about the learning. Sometimes those are a field trip, sometimes they're an event that parents are invited to, other times they're a simple classroom activity. One I can think of offhand is there's a unit about food, and so they baked bread for the entry point. From there, they go to the knowledge harvest, which is a chance for teachers to understand what kids might already know about this topic and also what they're interested in and cater the unit toward that. From there, there's sort of an introduction to create context for the learning. And then they go into the research and recording activities, which are really the bulk of learning in the unit. They do investigations. One unit I'm thinking of that our first graders are currently in is on careers. And so research and recording might look like interviewing people in different careers and writing up the interviews and presenting them to the class. And then once they've done all those investigations, they close the unit with an exit point, which is really a chance to show off their learning. Those times we almost always involve parents, and they're a really exciting time. On one of the previous slides, you actually saw an example of one that we had in our big main hall that I think you saw in the video, where parents came in, the same unit I mentioned a minute ago. They had an international food fair, and that was really fun. They've also had, for the career day unit last year, we're not able to do it this year, but we're trying to do a virtual version. Students dressed up like the career they would eventually like to be and presented information on that career. So they're really a fun chance to engage with the school community. So now we'll go over what a typical day in our early childhood program looks like. They have learning centers twice daily for about an hour each time. That's really where the bulk of the international curriculum is introduced. They're very interactive. They're based on student choice so that students can opt, maybe a unit is about buildings, for example. They might opt to build a building with blocks. They might opt to draw a building in the art center. They might opt to look at a book about buildings in the library. And so they're very thematic, but students still are given a lot of choice in terms of how they interact with the content during those times. That's also where the bulk of teaching happens. The teacher and teaching assistant work very closely with small groups during that time to monitor their progress and push them to the next level in terms of their engagement. Our enrichment classes, we have music, art, PE, Mandarin, and Spanish. All of those are once a week. And that is also very tied to the international curriculum. For example, if the unit is about food around the world, in their classroom, then maybe they'll learn some songs about food and music, or maybe in Mandarin, they'll learn about some specific foods that are representative of the culture. One thing that I'm most proud of in terms of our school is that we have 2 30-minute recess blocks for all students through 4th grade. It really reflects the needs of the child and the student-centered approach we have. And it's also just a really fun time of day for the students. And it's a gorgeous chance, a chance to take advantage of our gorgeous play space. The kids really love it. They have snack once a day, depending on their schedule, and that can be brought from home, but we also have some backups just in case they forget. For early childhood, we're really trying to provide an option for what is most appropriate for the students in terms of whether they are taking a nap. Lots of our 3-year-olds still need naps, and some are ready to come in from recess and not nap at all. And so we're trying to tailor it more to their needs in terms of providing options for naps versus just a time for quiet and sort of a chance to disconnect for a little while and get ready for the afternoon. And in early childhood, both breakfast and lunch are in the classroom. Next slide, please. Like I was saying, these pictures are really reflective of what school looks like throughout the day. These are examples of some of our centers. The big pictures on the left-hand side, you can see kids using different types of materials. There's only a few kids together at one center. And so they're really provided a lot of choice and hands-on learning throughout the day. The top small picture is also one of our centers, I believe. I think it's dramatic play. And then the bottom is just an example of a fun activity. I believe that's from our Halloween parade. And so what I really like is that you very rarely walk into a class and see a lot of kids sitting or the teacher working with the whole class at one time, because that's just not reflective of student needs. Now for K-4. Like I said earlier, Oh, this is an example of the unit I was talking about earlier. This is the careers unit from last year on the left. That table front and center was a group of veterinarians that we had. And then on the right, this is an example of what it has looked like virtually. And that's one of our first grade teachers trying to engage her students in fun. I believe that was an entry point to a unit. The day in K through 4 is structured a little differently than early childhood, but it's consistent K through 4. There's a literacy block, a math block, and on the next slide, you'll see the international curriculum block. Oop, I'm wrong. I thought there's an IPC block as well. And so basically there's 3 learning blocks throughout the day. And can you actually go back to the previous slide, Margaret? And same thing here. You see that there aren't big groups of kids doing the same thing throughout the classroom. They're doing what they need. And the bulk of instruction is provided in small groups to meet them right where they are. Next slide now. The same enrichment classes are in K through 4, and it's the same approach in terms of integrating content throughout the enrichment classes to match what they're learning in their regular classroom instruction. In K through 4, they eat breakfast and lunch in the cafeteria, which is the main hall you saw in the video. And they continue to have 2 30-minute recess blocks, like I mentioned, which is really, really hard to find in public schools in general, but especially in DC. And so that's something that is really stand out about our program.
So hi, everyone. Again, my name is Lorna Dill, and I am the middle school director. Next slide, Margaret. So as you can see, in alignment with the lower school and as a whole school goal, we choose to use or implement the holistic international program. And our curriculum is international middle years for 5th through 8th graders. As you can see from the pictures, we have students who are reading each other's essays. This is particular unit was aligned with the English language arts class. They did painted essays, and so they were able to use their words to draw a picture, and then they have opportunity to review each other's essays. Thank you. So we also use the same curriculum with in alignment with the IMYC. And so our international middle years curriculum does the same thing as lower school. We have our entry points, our knowledge harvest, explaining the theme, and then we have a reflect, research, and record session where the students have an opportunity to journal and to research and to come up with their own ideas, to interview each other, to interview their relatives about topics, and then they come back together and they share that experience at the exit point. One of the actual units is called balance. And so with that unit, we try and make sure that every class that the students take revolves around balance. So if they are reading in ELA, they're reading something about balance and as it relates to a topic. If there's in social studies or humanities, they're looking at the balance of power and what does our political system look like. So we take those themes and we make sure that they're integrated across all of the subject areas. Risk is also one of our unit themes. And again, we try and make sure that the students have opportunity to explore what does risk look like? What's the difference between a calculated risk and a non-calculated risk. And so we try and make sure that students have experiences that they can use inside of school and outside of school. Next slide, Margaret. So at our day at a glance is typically breakfast and lunch in the cafeteria, which is our main hall that Ms. Long mentioned. We have 1 30-minute recess. And usually what that looks like is if a student has lunch, they eat lunch first and then they go to recess, and then there's a different group of students that go to recess first and then have lunch. Each child has a daily global language, and that's either Spanish or Mandarin. And they have that block, continuously throughout the year. If they pick a language at the beginning of the year, they typically have to stay with that particular language. And then towards the end of the day, we have a period where we call Genius Hour. And that's an opportunity for students to go to the teachers where they need the most help. For example, if they are having struggles in math, they can spend time with the math teacher. If they need help revising an essay, they can go and talk to the ELA teacher to get those revisions. And we just want to make sure that students have opportunities to advocate for themselves and that they learn to kind of modulate themselves. If they need help in particular areas, we want them to ask for it, to seek it out, and to be able to voice what it is they need. Next slide. I already spoke about the global languages, which are either Mandarin and Spanish. And the students in the lower school, I believe they take both of them, but when they get to middle school, they have to select one of the languages. And again, that's on their daily schedule. Next slide. So a typical day in 5th grade would be 8:40 to 9 o'clock. We have an advisory period. And during that advisory period, we have been working on social emotional learning skills. We use conscious discipline. And so at that time, it's an opportunity for students to talk about like issues that they had maybe the previous day, or think about how to problem solve and be solution oriented. And we just try and make sure that students have an opportunity to voice how they're feeling and just work on social emotional learning skills. Then they would move to one of their core content subjects, which is ELA, math. They would have a period for the arts, which is either art, music, and PE. Then they would have recess and lunch, as I described, their science and humanities class, and then again, the language and then the Genius Hour. I'm going to turn it over now to Ty, I believe, who is our Creative Families Association treasurer, and she is a proud Chameleon parent.
I am. Thank you, Lorna. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. And so just to talk very briefly about kind of my experience, my kids' experience at CMI. I mentioned I have a pre-K 3 student who this virtual year is his first year at Creative Minds. But then I have a 3rd grader, and she's been at Creative Minds since 1st grade. And I just kind of have to echo the IPC unit and the idea that, they go through these modules that kind of are thematic. Just makes her so excited about learning. The fact that everything is kind of, torn in or woven into that theme. It's been a lot of fun just to see her get so excited about Egypt, and then, that is supporting her learning in writing and learning in math, and then also just learning about the history and culture of Egypt, for example. And she really did love the international food subject as well. So I really appreciate the curriculum and how I've seen that impact my daughter. In addition, the teachers are super enthusiastic for at least the experience that we've had. And, that kind of bubbles over. And especially in this virtual year, you've kind of seen how they've had to collaborate and work together. And, to make sure that everyone is progressing through this kind of interesting learning environment. And so I know she's going to be ready for 4th grade next year. And that's because of just the collaborative nature, the way each of the grade parents really work together. My daughter's involved in the speech in the speech program with the special education folks here, and I can also say that it's like, to see her progress and have, the special education director as well as her teachers get together and try to really develop a plan that will benefit her and grow her. I've been really impressed with how much they care about her progress and her kind of getting over what hurdles that she has. I can't say enough. My daughter has participated in both before care and after care, and the extended creative day is also really exciting. Not only does she have in the just normal aftercare program, are there really fun teachers who are engaged that they play games with and whatnot, but the creative clubs have been great as well. She's taken advantage of photography club and STEM club and cooking and sewing, and it was really great. The sewing unit was wonderful, and she came home every night with a different, or every week on that day with, you know, different pillows that she had made, and she sewed herself some pajamas, and you know, just I mean, it was just a great experience. Also, there wasn't a lot of pictures of the playground space, I think, that you've seen. And again, it's really unfortunate that you guys cannot come to the campus and see the school. The playground space is really special. It's, you know, it's kind of, it has trees, a sandbox, a really great area for creative play. I know the playground and those recess periods the teacher spoke about, sorry, the administrator spoke about, have all been, you know, it's you know, some of her favorite part of the day, and one of the things I know she misses a whole lot about the school itself. And then just to talk about parent engagement, there's lots of opportunities. It really is a community at CMI. Not only do we work with the CFA, the parent organization, not only do we work in things like teacher appreciation and, you know, getting room parents, um, to just kind of foster that community both in the individual classrooms and grade levels, but also as a school. We do fundraisers throughout the year to support the library and academics, but we also have organized different events like picnics. We work with the Armed Forces Retirement Home and participate in their fall festival. And it's just a really, there's all these, you know, we have a big auction every year. There's just so many ways to kind of become part of the CMI family and to feel engaged and to really realize that the staff and an administration at the school really cares about your, you know, your whole family and your whole family success. So I can't speak to how much these folks care enough. And, you know, just I hope you guys decide to apply. Happy to answer any questions you might have, and sorry if I rambled.
I thank you so much for that. Just before we open it up to question and answer, I just want to just let everyone know, as the slide shows, that we are participating in the My School DC application process, and the link is there, as well as when the application period is open and when the results are released. So now we're going to stop sharing our slides here and really open it up to answer all the questions. Thank you for adding those questions to the chat, and we will dive right in to start answering those. Great. Let's see. Have you had any in-person teaching this academic year? So we are excited to start to offer in-person learning starting March 1st. We have invited some of our students back. Overall, we feel really good about our virtual learning, but we realize that some students are really thriving in this environment and some students are not doing so well. So we've decided that now, you know, looking at the data, which has really been driving our decision to return back to school all along, that we now that we the numbers are starting to decline. Some of our staff have been vaccinated, that we're able to safely bring some students back. And so we are excited to be doing that starting March 1st.
Okay, we have a question. Nyamka and Chuck, how many open seats for next year in pre-K 4 do you expect to have?
Great question. So normally, just so I can qualify, because I'm going to give a rough answer. Heather Hesslink, who is our director of operations, who manages all of our enrollment process, just got her second shot and is recovering. Some of us have had reactions to the second shot. So she is unable to join us today, but what I did is I pulled up my last My School DC lottery report. And what that tells us is how many of our current students have entered the lottery with the possibility of going to another school. So in pre-K 3, which would be the group moving to pre-K 4, only 7 kids have. So that means if all 7 of them get into another school, that would open up 7 seats in pre-K 4. So that's sort of how we would back into answering that question. For pre-K 3, it'll be all new students, right? So we'll have, I believe, 56 seats. Is it 56 or 58? 56. our pre-K3 classes, and I saw some questions later on about this, and Abby can probably give more detail. Our pre-K3 and pre-K4 classes are very small and have 2 instructors in each of them. But we'll get there when we get to that question.
Okay, next question, and I think I'm going to throw this to Chuck as well. What is the diversity breakdown amongst students, staff, and faculty?
That's a great question, and one of the things that we talk a lot about here at CMI. In fact, you saw when in the first slide about the mission, we rewrote the mission this year to put equity front and center. I think it's not only critically important to talk about it openly and to be transparent about it, but also to call it out. And so I don't have the exact demographic breakdowns of the students and the numbers, and in the My DC lottery data that I'm looking at right now, it does not break it down by race. It breaks it down by ward. It breaks it down by, I'm looking at it right now, even out-of-state folks applied, and age level. But I would say our teachers look like our students, right? We have a very diverse staff. We have a staff of about 125. We have, as we mentioned, 540 students. And we have everything, and I will drop in the later FAQ, the actual numbers. So we'll put those on our website. And they're also, just so you're aware, they're available at the Public Charter School Board because we report out on them every single year. Again, that's something Heather manages for us. So she would be able to pull up the file she sent them for our last annual report. It would be a year old. But generally speaking, we're pushing very hard for not just diversity, but for inclusion and for equity. They're a little different. Diversity is just the fact that you have people who look different, right? Inclusion is engaging people and really having everybody have a seat at the table. And I think their global curriculum provides that opportunity. It sort of forces our teachers to talk about those issues and address them when they come up. And certainly in this past year, with everything that's going on, and that we're right now in the middle, sort of towards the end of Black History Month, we've been doing a lot to not have shallow, sort of empty hero celebrations, but we've been trying to really engage in the issues and make sure folks have their voices heard. So I know it's not an exact numeric answer, but right now it's probably the best I can do, and I will make sure I'll drop the data in later.
Actually, I just pulled up our numbers. I just found it on the board website.
I was just calling for you.
Yeah, no worries. I just found, on the Charter Board website, the latest information. So Asian population, 4%, Black African American, 38%, Hispanic Latino, 16%, 2 or more races, 7%, white, 35%. That's for our students.
That's our students, right?
Students.
Okay, so I'm going to throw this question to Chuck just because I can today. What's the teacher-child ratio per class? Or is that an amp?
Actually, that's probably an accurate question, but I can tell you it's very small. So you could probably rough out the average numbers if you take 125 and divide it into 540. That'll give your adult to student ratio. We have a very large staff by design. Every class has a lead teacher or a teaching assistant or another teacher in it. And the class sizes, I think in the middle school, we cap them around 20, and in the lower school, it's 17 for the younger grades, for the early childhood grades, and a little bit larger, depending on sort of class sizes and who moves up each year into new grades. But Abby, do you want to provide a little insight about sort of how you structured the teachers in lower school, and then maybe Lorna can provide a little bit about what a middle school classroom looks like, student to teachers?
Sure. So in our early childhood program, the ratio is about 18 to 2, like Chuck said, a lead teacher and an assistant teacher. But one of the things that I really love is that very, very often there's also an inclusion teacher or a different type of related service provider also in the classroom. And so it's very, very common to see at least 3 adults in a classroom at a time up through 4th grade. For K through 4, there were about 21 students in a class last year.
And so for middle school, it's looking like maybe 20 to 22 students per 2 adults in the classroom. The good thing about middle school is for math and ELA for English language arts, there are 2 full-time teachers in the classroom. So there is an inclusion teacher and then a general education teacher.
Awesome. How have the pre-K 3 and pre-K 4 been doing with distance learning? And are they getting what they need to be successful in their next grade?
Early childhood is actually the program I'm most proud of right now. It's the one where we took a bigger risk than others in terms of designing it. We really focused on the children's needs and what is age appropriate, particularly for our pre-K 3 students who many of them have never been to school and this would be their first experience. We designed the day to have many optional parts and also stay aligned with our approach in school, which is that there are optional learning centers. And so each day the students can choose from 6 learning centers. There are 3 sessions, so they can go to 3 different each day. And they are art, music, literacy, a read aloud, science, and I'm forgetting one. What am I forgetting, guys?
And math.
Oh, math, of course, thank you. And so that is something that the families have really enjoyed, is that level of choice, and also the options in terms of the flexibility of, if my child naps at this time, is it the end of the world if they don't go to this center? The answer is no. And so we really left it up to families to decide on the best participation for their individual child. And it's been really successful. We've had great participation rates and lots of great positive feedback.
Awesome.
Margaret, can I add just one thing? Because we also realized that in this virtual space that having those younger learners on devices all day was not ideal. And we really wanted to kind of minimize that and include like movement within that. So that was also very purposeful in like the planning that went, that Abby was thinking about as she designed that program.
Great. Here's another question that I'm going to ask, but I think we might have to wait for Ms. Heather, which is how many open seats for middle school? And we have a daughter entering the 6th grade.
So I'll take a quick high-level swipe at that, looking at our DC lottery report. Again, it's a couple weeks old, so folks are still entering the lottery. It looks like our 5th grade, we had, so those would be rising 6th graders. It looks like 6 of them have entered the lottery for possibly going to another school. Now, there's always other attrition, families move out of state or whatever, so that number isn't solid. But that tells you, I mean, I'll brag a little bit here, that tells you that our kids want us to come back every year. And I think that's really amazing. That's due in huge part to the amazing program that Lorna has helped build in our middle school. It's really become a strong program in the last 2 years since she's been here, and I'm really proud of that. It looks like 13 of our 4th graders, which is a big transition year for every school, because a lot of middle schools start in 5th grade, have entered the lottery. So that would be almost twice as many seats going into 5th grade, it looks like right now.
Okay. How does your student-centered philosophy relate to or differ from a Montessori model? And we have a rising 6th grader.
I can start, and then if anyone else wants to chime in. I think with the Montessori and with our student center, I think the big piece of that, there's a lot of choice involved with that. And how our schools, since we are a public school, we are held accountable to, ensuring that our students are learning the state standards. So with that, our choice may be, we have to cover the standard, but how you exhibit your learning with that is the choice piece. So there is some choice, they might determine they may want to write it out. They may want to write a poem that expresses how they engage with that learning. They might create a dance routine or sing a song or music. So that's kind of how that difference looks. It's still choice, but there's kind of guidance and options that you have for that choice.
And I want to add that we do use rubrics in the middle school for certain projects, and we try and make sure that the students have the guidelines, but within those guidelines, they have voice and choice. They can choose to express how they learned something in particular, and then the teachers are very flexible, and we are keen on making sure that students know that they have options.
Great. Okay, here's another question. We tried to drive by, but the road seems to be closed. Is this just during the weekend, pandemic, trying to get an idea about the commute?
I'll take a quick swipe at this because I'm not sure which road you're on. If you're trying to get on campus, the typical sort of for normal visitors, not for the school families, usually come through something called Eagle Gate, which is at the corner of Upshur Street and Rock Creek Church Road. It's the main gate onto the campus. There's a guard chat there. There's rising gates. They check IDs. They make sure folks either have an appointment or they're here for a legitimate reason, whether it's Lincoln's Cottage or a tour or to visit the school or visit one of the residents within the campus. What we do when school's in session is there's another called the Harwood, so Harwood Street, so the Harwood Gate is sort of between the National Cemetery and the campus over by North Capitol Street. That is the gate that families use, and they come in, they do, again, go through a guard post where the guard checks to make sure they're supposed to be in. And you can drop off, you can park in the lot, you can walk your students in. That's during normal operations. So it is a little hard to get on campus right now unless you have an appointment. And the guards are pretty good about making sure everybody's wearing masks when they're on campus and knowing everybody's ID. You know, it's really helped mitigate the spread of COVID here. And what I love about it, quite frankly, is it makes our campus really safe for the students. When they're out at recess, you don't worry about a kid running out into a street because all the residents are looking out for them because they love the kids. You don't worry about it because the guards know the kids and the folks at Lincoln's Cottage know the kids. So there is that sense of community here where there's a lot more freedom. There's no big wire fences around the playground or anything like that. So I hope that answers your question. As we come more in person, as Nayaka mentioned, March 1st, and then we're going to be adding more throughout the spring and into the, sort of, I guess not early summer. As we ramp that up, we may be able to offer more in-person visits, but again, they're going to have to follow the CDC social guidelines and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, so I know it's not unusual in DC, but it concerns me that only 2 in 5 students test on grade level. Could you speak to that?
Sure, I'll speak to that. So as a public school, any student who wants to come to our school, we're welcoming of those students. And so we really take an approach of, we are looking at that growth. Students come to our school with a variety of different needs, and we want to ensure that no matter where they start, that they're growing. And, although, we keep that in mind of, how we, square up against other schools, but our really main purpose is to grow students where they are. And that's our focus. So we celebrate when we see students grow, and that's kind of where we are as a school. So, although, it may seem, wow, the school's not doing the best, but I think we really celebrate, and I think it really speaks to our program and how we're very inclusive of accepting anyone who wants to come to our school. And I think initially we got a reputation of, being so inclusive that we have, attracted a lot of families who have needs because their students have not had their needs met in other schools. So they come to us, and we're excited to have anyone that comes to our school. And really, we focus on that growth piece because I think that really speaks to our community and really being accepting of others no matter where they are. And our approach, if you have someone who comes and is a high flyer and they continue to be a high flyer, that doesn't speak volumes about your program. I think if you have students come and you have that growth, that's something that we really want to celebrate. So I think that is kind of our approach, that we are really focused on that growth. And what we've seen is that students have continued to grow at our program. And that's something that we're excited about.
And I just want to add sort of a city level layer to this a little bit, because it's something. So throughout the pandemic, all the city school leaders have been meeting on a regular basis, more than weekly in the beginning. And there is, and we're so grateful for this, the pandemic sort of woke everybody up to say that, oh, high stakes testing doesn't actually tell you whether kids are growing. It's a one-time snapshot. It doesn't give you a lot of good data on how to grow kids, whether they test at grade level or above grade level, that kind of stuff. What it does is it allows people to sort of say, my school is a good school. What we've seen and what the city's woken up to is these huge inequities where a lot of the schools that don't perform well, which sort of keeps the city average down, are schools that are under-resourced, where kids are lagging. They may have needs, special ed needs or whatever that haven't been met. So I think CMI is designed, Creative Minds is designed to grow kids and to grow people. And the beautiful part, and the reason I'm talking about it right now is the city's starting to get there. They're talking less about high stakes testing, they're talking about growth. And that's the public charter school board, because they realize all kids are individual. There isn't a prototypical second grader. There isn't a prototypical sixth grader. We're all human beings and we're all in our own development cycle. And whether you master something in 6 months and you're in second grade, or it takes you a year and a half, it doesn't matter, because either way you're gonna get there and we're gonna get them there. So I'm just pleased. That's one of the very few positive things that's come out of the pandemic, where folks have realized this linear approach to education. You notice our curriculum is circular. It spirals around itself. That's how you learn. That's how you grow. That's how you increase. Linear is not how kids grow. So just a little high level stuff that I like to talk about.
Okay. How often does pre-K 3 have Spanish and Mandarin?
Each once a week, and that's continuous all the way through grade 4.
Okay, and could you talk a little bit about the proficiency of the students with their respective language at the conclusion of middle school?
So that's going to depend on when we receive the student and which language they choose to select and when they come to 5th grade. But if they stick with the language, they engage with the teachers, the activities, I think they are ready for, when they go to high school, they should be ready for the freshman level high school course for whatever language it is that they choose, either Mandarin or Spanish.
Lorna, which schools do the children attend after Creative Minds?
Wow, Nyamka.
On this one, because I was like, I wanted to jump in on your last answer, Lorna, because a lot of our kids go off to like DC International, which offers both Mandarin and Spanish and French, both, I guess, all three. And they do really well there. And they're going in with that language every day of the week into where most middle schools or junior high schools start. That's the first time kids are getting the language, unless they're in a bilingual program. We don't pretend to be a bilingual immersion program. We're not like Oyster Adams. We're not like DC Bilingual or Yu Yang. Our kids aren't half a day in one language, half a day in another language. This is a global curriculum to sort of open kids' eyes and expose them to things. And then, as Lauren was talking about, give them the self-agency to start picking. So that's why we give kids the opportunity to pick in 5th grade what language they want to pursue and start to master and move on that path towards mastery. And then they may go to a DCI, DC International, and take, Mandarin with a bunch of kids who have had Mandarin all through elementary school, and they're actually doing okay there. We place our graduates, we have one counselor in our middle school, that's her sole job, is to place we have 36 graduates this year. Who will be graduating this year, to work with all of them to get them into a school that individually works for them. So it is one-on-one counseling almost. We don't just pipe all kids into Wilson High School or into Deal Middle School or into private schools. We've been able to put kids in charter schools. We've put them into private schools. We've been able to get a bunch of our kids into some of the sort of DCPS high-flying schools. And they've all done pretty well once they've left us. I think it's that self-agency, that resiliency, our personal goals that we talk about every month, prepare our students to be successful no matter where they land. Sorry, Lorna, I just wanted to jump in.
You're fine.
Okay, can I jump in on that as well? Every fall, we do have a high school fair where we invite private schools and other public schools to come in and speak with our students. And this year, even though we were remote, we were able to do it online. So that has been one of the services and one of the things that we offer our students. Going back to my role with the questions. With the school accepting children in all grades, how does the school maintain their values and success?
Sure. I think it can be for a student coming into this. I know I've heard from some families, it can be like an awakening almost, because typically in some other schools it's very like approach to behavior is very different than what we do. I think the moment you come in, we want you to feel welcome. We greet you when you walk in the door. There's people greeting when you leave. Your teachers greet you when you enter your classroom. It's such this feel that we're excited that you're here. And I think that kind of welcoming, open, like it's hard to kind of not want to engage with that when there's so many people who kind of want to engage with you. So I think it does take some time to, for someone to kind of come in and say, oh, wow, it may seem a little bit different than your environment before, but I think just how everyone is so committed to that community feel that it's easy to kind of engage with that, and it's exciting and it's fun. So I think we haven't had families like not embrace that, or students not embrace that wanting to be part of the community, because everyone wants to feel connected during these times.
And throughout, from pre-K3 all the way through 8th grade, the same personal goals happen at the same time at every grade level. We spiral again, as I was talking about spiraling again. So the children might learn about respect even in pre-K3. Every other grade is going to be talking about respect at the same time. So students who have been in the school for a while can add to that conversation, as well as the new students coming in, being part of that community, can learn quickly from them. And really, not only does the staff embrace new folks to Creative Minds, but the students do too. Every day when they were here, I would look out my door, which is over there that way, looks into the hallway, and I'm watching students help other students get things out of their locker, find their books. That's sort of the orientation here. And it's really, really warm. And I think it makes the transition, well, yes, it can be jarring if you come from a high compliance school. If you come from a school that's got uniforms and quiet hallways, and you're not allowed to talk, and you get demerits, or you earn kit dollars or whatever it might be. It is a big experience to suddenly be in a place where if you raise your hand, say I have to go to the bathroom, like, okay, go to the bathroom, just come back right away. That can be new for kids, but they pick up on it really quick.
Okay. Do you know roughly how many of the spots will go to current siblings?
We're going to have to wait to answer that one to send it to Heather Hessling, but we do have a sibling preference. So that would move you up in the lottery.
Okay.
For example, I think last year was about 20% in preschool.
Yeah, we have a lot of families here with multiple kids in multiple grades, that's for sure.
Okay, how many kids are in one class at pre-K3, and how many teachers? Just to make sure.
One teacher, one teaching assistant, and about 18 kids in early childhood.
Okay. Is there any homework for pre-K students?
No, we actually have a very liberal homework policy in terms of recognizing that kids need to be kids, and that's what we want them to be at home. They do have some homework beginning in kindergarten, but it's relatively light, and it's always something very connected to what they've done in class. But we encourage reading every day, and then beyond that, it varies a little bit, but we really try to focus on what is right for kids to be doing in the afternoons, which isn't more of the same.
And then also just want to add that homework is like, it may be interview a family member, or it's something very connected. It's not like a worksheet or something in kindergarten. It's really connected to what they're learning, and an opportunity for them to engage with their family, or like call a loved one and kind of ask some questions, which is fun for them to do, and not really seen as homework, but kind of extension of the learning that's happening during the day.
Is before care and after care guaranteed for all kids who want it?
Yes, it is. So if you have a space at our school before and after care, there are spaces available for that. The creative care options are those kind of are kept to a minimum number because we really want the students to be able to engage and have an opportunity. And so that is kind of there's spots offered for that.
Okay. How early does before care start?
I believe it was 7:30. It seems like so long ago. 7:30. Yes.
Okay. How many fourth grade classes do you have, and how many students are in each class?
3 classes at each grade level. Next year will be the first year that we've grown to full capacity for the lower school. So there will be 3 classes in fourth grade with about 21 students in each class.
Thank you. Can you talk about the meals that are served, and are there vegetarian options?
Yes, this is Heather's. I'll try to take a stab at this. Yes, there are vegetarian options. We do partner with a vendor. We don't have an on-site kitchen per se, but they would deliver the meals to breakfast and lunch to our campus every day. They are, kept warm in a warmer and served to students. There are vegetarian option. There are, any sort of options or dietary restrictions can be accommodated.
Thank you. Talking about being inclusive, do you customize the relevant grades curriculum to meet the needs of students on IEPs? Are there opportunities for students to learn outside of the general education classroom if there's a better scenario? Do all students receive grades? And do you have a sensory room or other quiet space for kids in the middle school? So we can do that level, step by step, question by question.
Sure, I'll start with that. Talking about being inclusive, yes, we do take into consideration students' IEPs. And the great thing about our program is that for almost every single grade level, there's an inclusion teacher that works with that team. So they really understand the standards at that level and really can make those accommodations and modifications based on what they know about the students and what they know about the standards. There are opportunities for students to learn outside of the general education classroom. We want to minimize that as much as possible, but we do understand that there's some standards or skills that students are working on that would not be appropriate for them to do it in the classroom. For example, if there was an articulation issue, or something like that, where they just needed to practice saying something, they may need to do that outside of the classroom. Or if there was a goal or something that was not, say, related to what they were doing in the classroom, they would pull that out. But really, we want students to feel connected and not taking them out of an environment where they are missing something to do this other thing. We want to make sure that if we're removing them from that setting, it's for a concrete skill and they're not missing something that they would need for their continued learning in the classroom. Do all students receive grades? Yes, they do. And we also kind of provide comments with that and opportunities for teachers to meet with students to kind of give clarity, because grades can be kind of abstract at times, and we really want families to understand where the students are. So they do receive grades, and then also opportunities to talk with teachers to kind of fully understand. And then also progress monitoring for any students with IEPs on how students are making progress with their goals. We do have sensory rooms. We have 2 in our building. Those are open for students. Some students have it kind of as part of their sensory diet, and they go there at articulated times throughout the day. We also have it available, like if a student just needs a movement break and just needs to calm down, or a space like that. So we do have sensory rooms, 2 sensory rooms in our building. I think those are all answered that whole question.
Thank you. Since kids come from all over the city, are there any coordinated transportation opportunities? Or do most middle schoolers take public transportation or get dropped off by their families?
That's a little bit of both. I can say that there is no coordinated transportation from all parts of the city. We do give the students the transportation card so that they can ride the city buses for free. We make sure that the gates, there's security at the gate. The students are allowed on campus. And we leave at the same time every day. Teachers walk students down. There's opportunity, like Chuck said before, for parents to drop off the students in the morning through the Harwood entryway, and then also at the end of the day to pick the students up on campus. And when you come, you'll see a long line of cars trying to drop off and then pick up at the end of the day.
Okay. We have a student that will be entering the fourth grade next year. Will she be okay to start Mandarin so late?
Yes, we really have a wide spectrum of proficiency levels within every class, and our language teachers are very skilled at including students at all those levels. And so that wouldn't be an issue at all, really.
Okay. Do lower levels have aftercare options of extra activities? And if so, what are some of the options available? Because we have a student that is interested in science.
Yes, we have, those are the creative clubs Nyamka was mentioning earlier, and we have all different ones. There's movement related ones. Last year there was an exercise club. There's also dance opportunities. And those are sometimes with in-house providers, and then sometimes we partner with someone outside. The ballet program, I believe, is called Tippy Toes. Is that right, Nyamka? Yeah. And then we also have more academic type programs like science, cooking, things like that to build on as well.
Okay. Thank you. Do students interact with individuals on campus outside of the school employees?
So I want to tack on a little bit to Abby's answer, because I'm really excited about introducing a new partnership that we're entering into for our aftercare. It's a group called Sticks and Bars, and it's a marimba band where kids can, after school, they can join. It would be a creative club, and it's run by an outside person, but they are phenomenal. My own kids one of my 3 kids went through it and got to play at Strathmore, got to play at the Kennedy Center with the marimba bands. It was really cool. Science, the other thing I'm super excited about science, I got to brag about Thomas Bang, one of our parents. He runs a robotics club and a robotics competition, citywide competition. We've hosted it in person 2 years ago, and we had kids at all grade levels participating in it. And then this year, for the first time ever, with 11 teams from the city, he hosted a virtual competition, which actually worked. It's amazing. And it's so exciting that our Creative Families Association, just so you get a sense of how the community interacts here, they've agreed to pay for robotics kits for more kids who may not be able to afford to join the club to be able to participate. So the kits are like $400 a piece. So they're buying a bunch of kits so Thomas can grow his club. And this came out of the community and supports the community. So that's sort of our approach to aftercare and to pretty much everything we do. So I'm sorry I had to jump in on that one. And I'm just super excited about both of those things.
Thank you. So the other question was, do students interact with individuals on campus outside of school employees?
Sure. So we used to have some of the residents come over and read with some of our students, which was really fun. We also have, during our Harvest Festival, when students dressed up in their costumes, they kind of walk through the hall where the residents are all lined up, which is really nice to see. Often you'll see the residents kind of walking around campus, and they're always waving to us. And so, yes, there are opportunities. We also have invited some of the residents over as related to our thematic unit. So I know one time there was, I forgot which grade level they were doing something, and there was a retired Air Force officer who came over and talked with the students. So really great opportunities to kind of have like living history come talk with our students. So as much as we can, we want to partner with the residents.
Okay, I tried to group all of the questions together, and hopefully I answered most of them, or you answered most of them. Are there any other questions? I think that for specific numbers, we will be sharing the actual seats available online, I think. And Ms. Heather will be able to answer that. I think that's it.
Margaret, I see one more. How do you accommodate IEP for speech in pre-K 3? Who can you contact about that? So that would be Maura Hoyson, and I can drop her address in the chat there.
Ms. Chestnut. Oh,
Jen, would you also put my email address in the chat? And anyone, yes, we can answer your questions now, or particularly any students in pre-K 3 or the lower school are more than welcome to reach out to set up a time to talk.
Jen, also for middle school, you can put my email address in there. Thanks.
what does the schedule of virtual class look like for pre-K 3 and kindergarten?
Sure. So they're different. I'll do the early childhood program first. We had 3 learning center opportunities throughout the day. And like I said, you can choose from 4 learning centers at a time, but we offer 6 throughout the day. They also have social groups. The whole school has a morning meeting every day at 9 o'clock. And then there are classes. There's an optional lunch session with our team that they can choose what class they'd like to visit that day. And then for K through 4, same thing. There's a morning meeting. They have small group classes throughout the day for each of their content classes, which are the international curriculum, literacy, and math. They also have social groups. And then the optional lunch, and then they close out the day with a live share, which is really, there's one for each subject per week, which is really just a way to celebrate the work they've done and show off what they're excited about.
Margaret, I saw a couple of questions were raised again. I just want to make sure we get them. So there's one about the lottery. I was waitlisted for pre-K 4 this year, applied for kindergarten, not 100% sure how the lottery process works. Is this relative in consideration for the request? The lottery is simply that. It is a lottery. We tell my school DC how many seats we have available, and then people list their choices. So you rank what schools you want to go to. So if you rank CMI towards the top, somehow the lottery algorithm will let us know that when we're able to offer up seats, and we offer them to folks who ranked us first and that kind of stuff. But every year the lottery resets. So if you've applied to the same school 3 times in a row, the lottery system doesn't take that into an account. So it's unfortunate, but that's just sort of the way they set it up to try to be fair and equitable to everybody.
Okay, do you expect, can you predict if you'll be back in a hybrid teaching model this fall?
I am cautiously optimistic that we'll be back in person in the fall. We are planning to be back in person in the fall. So we're building our budget, we're building our staffing model. I was just down in the Great Hall, and there's 20 plus Promethean boards that have just been built that are going to go into all the classrooms for in-person instruction. So we are acting as though we're going to reopen. We are cautiously optimistic because the number of vaccine doses has gone way up. We are getting our teachers vaccinated. The rates have gone down significantly recently. The variants, obviously, I mean, I hate to say it, but I read the DC coronavirus website every single day, a couple times a day. It's as though educators have all become doctors at this point. We're tracking all of that to be sure what we're doing is as safe as humanly possible. And so I want to suggest to everybody that we will be open normal in the fall or some kind of hybrid. I don't anticipate we'll be 100% virtual unless something strange happens.
Okay, Ms. Chestnut, I can't talk anymore. My second question was for kindergarten after school care, do lower levels have after care option of extra activities? And if so, what are some, if the options my kid is really interested in science?
Yeah, so there's extra activities for all levels, and the robotics team, that's one of them that's open to anyone, any grade level. And also like that, clubs really come about from either interest from either a teacher has an interest or a student. Like if a lot of families express an interest in a certain class or something like that, we can, look to find someone who may have that interest. So it's really driven by demand and, interests of our teachers.
Okay. You mentioned your reputation for inclusion. Is a 504 plan seen as a negative in other DCPS charter school lottery selection?
I don't know that I can't say that it's seen as a negative. I just think that we attract families who have IEPs or 504s. I think we attract families for a lot of different reasons. And I can't say that I know if schools see a 504 as kind of a negative. I think that would depend on the school.
Okay. How do you accommodate IEP for speech in pre-K 3? And who can Ms. Woodman see? I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. Contact. Who should she contact about this?
Maura Hoyson at Creative Minds. I'll drop her email in the chat.
Okay. And are the before and after care options open to all students? Are they based on space availability? Is there an additional cost?
So the before and after care options are open to anyone who has a space at our school. There is an additional cost for that service, but there is an open spot available for any student or family who chooses that option.
Great. I'm hoping that we answered everyone's question. If not, and you would like to drop your question in the chat,
And if we've been unable to answer your questions today, or oftentimes I tend to go away from these meetings and I think, oh, I wish I had asked, you can reach out to any of us. And I know Jen dropped in the chat the list of who you can reach out to and what areas their expertise is in and what they're responsible for. But you can always even just reach out to the school directly and call, and someone will direct your call to the right people. We are all about answering questions, being transparent, and doing what we can to make sure folks make an informed decision and come and join the Creative Minds community. We'd love to have you.